In broad daylight, the footage shows a figure walking across a college campus parking lot. It's a sight that should have been innocuous, but it's anything but. The man in the Deadpool costume isn't just another prankster. He's a predator who has been stalking 21-year-old Lauren McCluskey for over 2 weeks. Brace yourself as we uncover the chilling details of the Lauren McCluskey case, a tragedy that sent shockwaves across the United States in 2018. On October 22, 2018, Lauren vanished without a trace. Just 9 days earlier, on October 13th, Lauren had walked into the campus police department, trembling. She had received threatening text messages from an unknown number, and her heart was heavy with fear. But the police shrugged her off. No one believed her. In the following days, Lauren tried to sound the alarm. 14 calls to the cops. Yet, each time, she was dismissed, as though her distress meant nothing. And then there was the encounter on October 9th, captured on security cameras. Lauren meeting a man, Sean Fields, or so he claimed. Her roommate confirmed Lauren had planned to break up with him that same day. But Sean Fields, that wasn't even his real name. If it weren't for the clues Lauren had left behind, her disappearance could have easily remained unsolved. But Lauren, smart, brave, and relentless, ensured someone would uncover the truth and expose the sinister truth behind the man in the Deadpool costume. He wasn't just a harmless college eccentric. He was a manipulative, dangerous predator, skilled in deception. He got what he wanted, no matter the cost, and Lauren was just one of his victims. It all started back in 2013, in the small town of Pullman, Washington. Lauren, with her loving parents, Matthew and Jill McCluskey, had a seemingly perfect childhood. Successful in school, surrounded by friends, an athlete with no fear. By the age of 10, she earned second place in the USA Junior Olympics. Her talents were undeniable. She was unstoppable. The University of Utah, recognizing her potential, awarded her a scholarship, and in 2015, Lauren left the small town for the vibrant city of Salt Lake City. Her parents, filled with anxiety, watched their only daughter embark on this new journey, hundreds of miles away. But Lauren, full of confidence and maturity, quickly made new friends, including her best friend Alex. Lauren was more than just a track star. She was smart, a comedian, a dancer, a force of nature. And it was in the fall of 2018 that her life was forever changed. September 1st, Lauren, now 21, went out with her best friend Alex to celebrate her birthday. Downtown Salt Lake City was alive, and the London Bell was a popular bar, only a short walk from their dorm. The bouncer at the door, a towering figure, greeted them with a smile. His name was Sean Fields. Over the next few hours, Sean casually approached them multiple times, his charm never faltering. By midnight, the girls decided to leave, but as Lauren walked towards a door, she felt a hand grip her shoulder. It was Sean. He'd been watching her all night. He asked for her number, and they made plans for a date. September 2nd, Lauren's first date with Sean. In her life, she had never had a serious relationship, but Sean seemed perfect. He was attentive, kind, and they had much in common. Both were students. Both were busy with their studies. He was older, at 28, but still youthful in many ways. Lauren felt safe with him, and it seemed like a dream come true. At the end of the date, Sean even asked her to be his girlfriend, buying her flowers and making Lauren feel special. But it didn't stay that way for long. Lauren's friends began to notice changes. The confident, independent woman they knew seemed different, distracted, afraid, questioning every decision. What started as affection soon turned into something darker. Sean was no longer the charming boyfriend. He was obsessive. He bombarded her with calls, texts, and messages that made Lauren uncomfortable, pressuring her to comply with his every demand. His words seemed loving at first, wear this outfit, wear that, but the control was subtle and sinister. What seemed like small requests soon spiraled into full-blown manipulation. Lauren's life was no longer her own. Then, the man in the Deadpool costume was seen again. This time, Lauren knew she couldn't run from the danger anymore. And just days before she disappeared, she called the cops again, desperate, but they still didn't listen. Her disappearance would become the unraveling of a twisted web of lies and manipulation. Sean Fields wasn't who he appeared to be, and the truth would come out, along with the chilling revelation of the man in the Deadpool costume, the man who had been stalking Lauren all along, watching, waiting. And soon, his mask would fall. Why does she feel the pressure to pick up the phone when that number calls? Lauren, visibly distressed. Just weeks into the relationship, Sean consumes every moment of Lauren's life. He's not just her boyfriend. He's practically living in her dorm, weaving himself into her every interaction. He's making friends with students, gaining access to her building without needing a key card, and slowly taking control of her entire existence. Lauren becomes increasingly withdrawn, her energy drained. Her friends notice the change. She's not the vibrant, strong woman they once knew. She's now anxious, exhausted, and haunted by the relationship she can't seem to escape. Everything takes a darker turn on October 1st, 1 month after Lauren first met Sean. He insists he has a gift for her, one that's for her protection. The gift? A loaded, military-grade pistol. Shocked, her friends immediately intervene, warning Lauren that this isn't about safety, it's about control. But it's too late. Sean's grip on her life is tightening. Lauren's friends, desperate and worried, escalate their concerns to Diamond, the dorm's resident assistant. They fear Lauren is in danger. Sean's threats and the gun are no longer things to dismiss as harmless. Diamond, alarmed by the growing tension, reaches out to the university's security team. Yet despite the urgency, the response is chillingly indifferent. Her email, pleading for help, is met with silence. No action, no follow-up. 2 days later, on October 2nd, campus security receives the first formal report about Sean Fields. The email outlines concerns. Lauren may be in danger. Sean is spending too much time on campus, possibly acquiring a weapon, and tracking her every move. Yet, despite the red flags, nothing is done. Days pass, and the silence grows louder. Then on October 9th, Lauren stumbles across something she never expected to find. Sean's ID card. The name on it isn't Sean Fields. It's Melvin Rowland. A cold shiver runs down her spine as she pieces together the horrifying truth. Melvin Rowland is no innocent college student. He's a convicted felon with a history of enticing minors, sexual abuse, and a string of parole violations. This man, the one who has been living under the false name of Sean Fields, is a dangerous predator. Furious and terrified, Lauren doesn't waste a moment. She begins searching online, uncovering Melvin's criminal record in chilling detail. This man, her supposed boyfriend, is a threat to her life. She makes a plan to confront him and break free from his suffocating grasp. The night of October 9th arrives. As the clock ticks toward midnight, Lauren braces herself for the confrontation she never thought she'd have to face. When Melvin enters her room, she finally faces him with the truth. His response is explosive. He denies everything, his criminal past, his manipulative tactics. But Lauren doesn't falter. She tells him their relationship is over, and she refuses to continue living in fear. Hours pass, filled with shouting and desperation, before Melvin finally leaves. But Lauren knows this isn't the end. It's only just beginning. The next day, October 10th, Lauren feels a flicker of relief. She believes she's free, but what happens next plunges her back into terror. The texts begin. Messages from unknown numbers flood her phone, each more threatening than the last. Her instinct tells her these are Melvin's friends, trying to intimidate her into submission. Her response is swift. Stop contacting her, or she'll go to the police. But the messages only escalate. One message in particular stands out. Melvin has died in a car accident. It says, urging her to attend his funeral. The manipulation is suffocating. Lauren is trapped in a web of lies and threats, unsure of what to believe or who to trust. By October 12th, Lauren's fear turns to panic. She calls campus police at 4:23 p.m., desperate for help. She's frightened, she's terrified, but the response is cold. No return call, no urgency. The police don't seem to take her seriously. Frustrated and scared, she goes to the campus police in person. But it's the same. She feels invisible, her fears dismissed, the threat looming larger than ever. And now, with no one to turn to, Lauren is left alone in the face of a predator's obsession. He's a convicted sex offender. He's been to prison. The revelation hit like a hammer, shattering any illusions of safety. The truth was undeniable, yet Lauren had to uncover it herself. She Googled his name, handed over her phone, and watched him confront the stark reality. Melvin Rowland was far from an innocent man, but the reaction she received was as cold as it was dismissive. It's probably just a scam, they said, brushing off her concerns as paranoia. The truth became impossible to ignore when she revealed a critical detail. The number sending her the relentless, harassing messages was the same one Rowland had used during their relationship. In that moment, the denial crumbled. The danger wasn't just a possibility. It was real, and it was getting closer. Yet, despite the obvious danger, the police didn't take immediate action. They told Lauren that the detective wasn't in the office and that she'd hear back by Tuesday. But the case had been assigned to Detective Kayla Daloff, who, at the time, was on vacation. It was like the world had forgotten Lauren's cries for help. Despite Lauren providing every unsettling detail, including Rowland's violent criminal history, no one bothered to follow up. They didn't even check his parole status, which would have immediately flagged him as an active threat. The longer the case went unresolved, the more terrified Lauren became. Frustrated and desperate for action, Lauren reached out to the Salt Lake City Police Department. Surely, they would understand the urgency, but instead, they simply redirected her back to campus police, the same ones who had been stalling for days. Lauren couldn't sit back and wait any longer. Her safety was slipping through her fingers, and no one seemed to care. She called the police over 20 times in the days that followed. Each attempt met with silence, each unanswered phone call making the terror grow. By October 19th, Melvin had taken his obsession to a new, chilling level. He had bought a Deadpool costume, preparing to wear it for Halloween. But he wasn't planning on trick-or-treating. He was planning something much darker. Just 10 days after Lauren ended the relationship, surveillance footage caught him lurking around campus, his face hidden behind a mask. He was stalking her, silently moving through the shadows, holding a small black bag. Little did Lauren know, that bag contained a deadly weapon, a fully loaded .40 caliber Beretta. The stalking didn't stop there. On October 22nd, just days later, Melvin was back, caught on multiple security cameras, holding the same black bag, once again searching for Lauren. But this time, Lauren didn't know he was right around the corner. At 8 p.m., she finished her last class and began her walk back to the dorm, calling her mom like she did every day. She sounded calm, upbeat, as if nothing was wrong. But then, As she walked alone, something changed. Matthew and Jill, Lauren's parents, were on speakerphone, casually chatting about her day, when they suddenly heard something. Strange noises, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone yelling. Then, silence. The phone clattered to the ground. Lauren's parents screamed her name, frantic, desperate for a response. But there was nothing. "We knew something was wrong," Jill recalls. "I grabbed the landline and dialed 911. We didn't know where she was. We were just praying they could find her." The police had finally been forced to take action, but it was too late. Lauren had vanished. They launched a desperate search, combing through the campus, but it seemed like she had just disappeared into thin air. Every minute that passed felt like a lifetime, and Lauren's parents were left helpless, their calls to the police unanswered. Then, just as hope seemed to be slipping away, a student made a call that could change everything. Walking across campus, they found something, a clue, a sign that might lead them to Lauren. Could this finally be the break they needed? Could they still save her before it's too late? The clock was ticking, and Lauren's fate hung in the balance. The scene was a nightmare unfolding before their eyes. Lauren's personal belongings were scattered haphazardly across the ground, but there was no sign of her. Police cars filled the area, sirens blaring, while K-9 units and officers meticulously set up a perimeter. Students on campus grew anxious, murmuring in confusion as they watched the chaos unfold around them. Whispers turned into frantic questions. Asterisk, what was happening? What were they looking for? Where was Lauren? Asterisk, as the police scrambled for answers. The phones rang non-stop, students terrified and unsure of what to do. Then came the shelter-in-place alert, followed by the chilling broadcast of Melvin Rowland's face. The campus was on lockdown. A manhunt was underway, and the clock was ticking, each passing minute adding to the growing dread. But Lauren was still missing. As the hours dragged on, the police reviewed security footage, hoping for any clue that could lead them to her. Suddenly, the breakthrough came. There on the grainy footage was Melvin Rowland, a man matching the description of their prime suspect, heading away from the campus, his movements cold and calculated. At 8:21 p.m., he was seen leaving the parking lot on foot. He made his way to a nearby light rail station, then vanished. The trail had gone cold, until later that night, when a terrified woman made an unexpected call to the police. She had recognized the man from the television broadcast. She described how Melvin, now using a different identity, had met her through an online dating app. She'd picked him up at the station, and they had spent the evening together. After a shower at her house, he had left, disappearing into the night. It wasn't until 1 a.m. that a police officer spotted Melvin in downtown Salt Lake City. "I have officers chasing your suspect on foot. He's on the move," came the frantic radio transmission. Melvin ran, weaving through the streets as the officers closed in. But he was quick, too quick. He slipped away into the darkness, ducking into a nearby church and barricading himself inside. The neighborhood was locked down in a heart-stopping silence. Everyone knew something was coming, but no one knew what. Suddenly, the deafening sound of gunfire shattered the night. Police stormed the church, guns drawn, ready for whatever came next. When they breached the large wooden doors, they found Melvin Rowland, lifeless, a self-inflicted gunshot wound marking the end of his violent pursuit. While the hunt for Melvin unfolded, the search for Lauren continued. Police had found her belongings and had combed through her dorm, but she was nowhere to be found. Hours later, the vehicle Melvin had been driving, a small silver car, was discovered. Police approached the car with caution, but when they opened the door, the horrific reality struck: a body inside. Urgency surged through the officers as they called for medical assistance. But time had already run out. At 11 p.m. on the night of October 22nd, Lauren's parents received a call that no parent should ever have to hear. The university's track and field coach was on the other end, delivering the devastating news. "Is she okay?" Lauren's father asked desperately. The coach's response shattered everything. "I'm sorry. She's gone." The grief was instantaneous, overwhelming. It was like being hit with a baseball bat, Lauren's mother, Jill, recalled, her voice breaking. As the words sank in, Jill received a text message from Lauren's friend, Mrs. McCluskey. "We lost her. Lauren's been shot." Lauren's parents stepped outside, staring into the dark sky, hoping, no praying, that their daughter hadn't suffered. But the truth was undeniable. The life of a bright, compassionate young woman had been cruelly stolen. In the wake of her death, disbelief and devastation rippled through the campus. Friends, family, and the entire university community were left reeling, struggling to understand how this could happen. Days later, the school held a vigil, mourning the loss of a young woman who had meant so much to so many. Lauren had been a kind soul, genuine, thoughtful, and always caring. The void she left was immeasurable. But in the midst of their grief, Lauren's parents couldn't shake the haunting question. Why had the campus police failed to take her warning seriously? Time and time again, Lauren had begged for help, and yet the pleas had been ignored. How had they missed the signs? How had they let this happen? Amid the growing outrage, the university held a controversial press conference. The president stood before the media, offering a statement that would spark even more anger. There was nothing that the campus security could have done to prevent this tragedy, she said, offering no real explanation or accountability. "I was shocked when I heard that," Lauren's father, Matt, said through tears. How could she say that? How could they not have done more? The words hung in the air, a bitter reminder that no amount of words could undo the horror that had befallen their daughter. The world had lost Lauren McCluskey, and in the silence that followed, only one truth remained. It was too late for apologies. I felt my stomach churn, as if the world itself was collapsing around me. How dare they? How dare the university try to cover its tracks while we're left here with nothing but an aching void where our daughter once was? Lauren's gone. She's gone. And they want to shift the blame? The number of times she begged for help, her cries for justice falling on deaf ears. It should have only taken one call. One call. Instead, it was ignored over and over again, as though her life meant nothing. Furious and heartbroken, Matthew and Jill McCluskey refused to let the university's negligence go unchallenged. They filed a lawsuit, not just for justice, but to ensure no parent would ever have to endure what they had. This was more than just about their daughter. It was about changing an entire system that failed to protect her. They demanded accountability from the institution that had let their daughter slip through the cracks. They fought for reform, hoping that through the ashes of their grief, something positive could emerge. The memory of Lauren would be the catalyst for change. "I don't want to be here in a world without Lauren," Matthew said, his voice breaking. "But I'm here, and I have no choice but to fight. I have no choice but to make the world better, because Lauren deserves that." In her memory, they established the Lauren McCluskey Foundation, a beacon of hope dedicated to campus safety reform. All the proceeds from their lawsuit would be funneled into this cause, ensuring that her death would not be in vain. The McCluskeys weren't just seeking justice, they were creating a movement that would make campuses across the country safer, that would prevent other families from experiencing the pain they had suffered. What started as a personal tragedy sparked a wave of change that swept through the nation. Protests erupted. Signs like *Justice for Lauren*, Asterisks were plastered on the windows of government buildings. And they didn't stop there. They fought for real, tangible reforms, from changes within police departments to overhauls in housing, to the establishment of new task forces and comprehensive faculty training. The world had to change, and they were going to make sure it did. One of the most powerful tributes to Lauren's memory was the promise of an indoor track and field facility, forever bearing her name. Every day, Lauren's legacy was honored, not in words, but in actions. The promise that women would be believed, that when they asked for help, their cries would not be ignored. This promise, known as Lauren's Promise, became a rallying cry for women across the nation. It was a vow that when someone spoke up, when they said they were in danger, you would listen, and you would act. The message was clear. It's not your fault. It's okay to talk about it, and we're going to do something about it. The promise took root in communities nationwide, growing stronger with each passing day. Lauren's Promise became more than just a foundation. It became a lifeline. Students came forward, telling their stories, saying, "Because of Lauren's Promise, I'm still here. I'm alive." And so, even in the face of their unimaginable grief, Matthew and Jill McCluskey found strength. They found purpose. They knew that Lauren's story wasn't just about a tragedy. It was about transformation. It was about making sure that, in the end, no one else would have to endure what they had. Thank you for tuning in to our channel. We hope you enjoyed the content and found it informative. Please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. We also encourage you to leave a comment below, as we genuinely appreciate your feedback and love hearing from our viewers. If you have any case suggestions or topics you'd like us to cover in future videos, please let us know. Until next time, stay safe out there. Would you dare to step into the horrifying lairs where serial predators unleash their terror on helpless victims? Brace yourself, because today you will be thrust into the heart of darkness as we unravel the terrifying world of the notorious Maury Travis. Picture this. You've just found the perfect house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The rent is affordable, and you can't believe your luck. You revel in the peace of the surroundings, breathe in the fresh, clean air, and enjoy the soothing melody of birdsong every morning. You sit by your window, taking in the tranquil view, feeling like you've stumbled upon a hidden gem. But one fateful day, you switch on the TV, and a chilling sight shakes you to your core. There, on the crime report, is a photo of your house, now dubbed nothing less than Travis's House of Horrors. The central figure in today's chilling tale, Maury Travis, was born on October 25th, 1965, and known by the nickname Toby. He grew up in Carr Square, a public housing complex in St. Louis, Missouri, alongside his mother Sandra and father Michael. In April 1976, the family moved into a home on Ford Avenue in Ferguson, hoping for a fresh start. At first glance, Maury's childhood seemed uneventful. He was introverted and quiet, a boy who kept to himself, yet always polite and respectful. Adults saw him as a model of decorum, someone who always followed the rules and adhered to social norms. Teachers remembered him as a soft-spoken teenager who went so far as to mow his neighbor's lawn without being asked. He was the kind of student who faded into the background, leaving no lasting impression on anyone. Even years later, when the police interviewed people who had known Maury in his youth, many couldn't even recall his name. He was a ghost in his own past, ordinary and unremarkable. The only hint of trauma in his early life seemed to be the painful separation of his parents. Maury graduated from McClure High School in 1985 and enlisted in the Army Reserves for 2 years. Afterward, he worked as a medical and dental assistant, even volunteering at a local nursing home. He appeared to be on a steady, promising path. But in 1986, at the age of 22, Maury took a fateful step. He enrolled at Morris Brown College in Atlanta. It was there, in the heart of a seemingly bright future, that Maury encountered cocaine, a destructive force that would spiral him into darkness. His addiction quickly consumed him, reaching a devastating $300 a day, and with it came a desperate need to feed the habit. Maury's descent into crime was swift and shocking. The once law-abiding young man who had been on track to build a life for himself now found himself caught in the grip of criminal activity. What had seemed like an ordinary life turned upside down in an instant as he plunged into a world of theft and violence to support his insatiable addiction. Law enforcement soon took notice, and Maury, whose past had been unblemished, became a criminal in the blink of an eye. In March 1988, during his college spring break, Maury Travis shocked everyone with a series of robberies that left the community stunned. In a mere span of 8 days, he targeted 5 different shoe stores in St. Louis. But what made these crimes even more bizarre was his weapon of choice. Instead of a menacing firearm, Maury wielded a plastic toy gun, an odd and unsettling tool to instill fear. This sudden plunge into criminality was as unexpected as it was dramatic, considering Maury had no prior history of such behavior. It marked a sharp and unsettling turn in his life, a decision that would set him on a dangerous path. His crimes didn't go unnoticed for long. Witnesses gave police detailed descriptions of Maury's car, leading to his swift arrest. The detective handling the case was left bewildered. Maury didn't fit the usual profile of a criminal. He was, after all, the quiet, polite young man everyone knew. Upon his capture, Maury explained his actions by claiming hazy memories of robberies, attributing it all to the influence of drugs. While awaiting sentencing, Maury entered a drug rehabilitation program, hoping to show that he had turned a new leaf. He spoke of his recovery and insisted he had overcome his addiction. Despite these claims and his previously spotless record, the court couldn't ignore his recent actions. In the midst of his trial, a flood of character references poured in, including one from a congressman, all vouching for his potential and the rehabilitation he had undertaken. They argued that his criminal actions were a temporary aberration, not a reflection of his true character. However, none of this was enough to change the court's verdict. On July 5, 1989, just 23 years old, Maury Travis was sentenced to 15 years in prison. His brief moment of freedom was over, and a long, tumultuous chapter behind bars began. 2 months after his incarceration, Maury wrote a heart-wrenching letter to the judge, pouring out his despair and pleading for mercy. In the letter, he described the brutal, suffocating reality of prison life, the constant threat of violence, the loneliness that gnawed at him hour after hour. His words were raw with emotion as he confessed to the overwhelming dark thoughts that clouded his mind every day. He spoke of his sleepless nights, racked with tears, contemplating the possibility of ending it all. The isolation, the relentless harassment from fellow inmates, and the unbearable conditions of confinement weighed heavily on him. In a desperate bid for a second chance, Maury begged the judge to reduce his 15-year sentence, suggesting that a mere 120 to 180 days would suffice to make him see the light. He swore he would use that time to reform, to prove he could be a better man. Yet, despite his heartfelt plea, the judge turned a deaf ear, leaving Maury to confront the grim reality that his life behind bars was far from over. However, fate had a twist in store. In June 1994, after serving 5 years and 3 months, Maury was granted parole. He moved into a quiet duplex with his neighbor, Linda Harris, a woman who found Maury to be nothing short of pleasant. He was calm, considerate, never a source of trouble. But beneath the surface of this unassuming exterior, something darker was brewing. The two shared a basement, and one day, Maury's sudden appearance downstairs startled Linda so badly that she recoiled in fear. Afterward, he made it a point to whistle a tune every time he descended, offering her an apology that lingered long after. Despite his apparent attempts at normalcy, Maury's struggle with addiction was far from over. The familiar pull of the white powder resurfaced, dragging him back into the depths of his old demons. His brief taste of freedom was quickly overshadowed by a descent into chaos once again. For years after his release, Maury Travis's life took another twisted turn. He violated his parole, landing him back behind bars for a brief sentence related to possession of illicit substances. But his taste of freedom wasn't over yet. By 1999, Maury was out again, but his soul was lost in a haze of uncertainty. Unsure of his next move, he tried to rebuild, to regain some semblance of a normal life. It was the summer of 2000 when he found work as a waiter at a local hotel restaurant. A simple job, yet it became the backdrop for a chilling series of events. It started with odd conversations with his colleague, Dave. On one occasion, Maury casually remarked that if he ever needed to get rid of something or someone, he knew the perfect place: East St. Louis. No cops, no questions asked. It was an unsettling suggestion, but what happened next made the words echo ominously. A few months after this conversation, a dead body was found in East St. Louis. Dave's girlfriend, a journalist at a local news station, was left uneasy when Maury approached her one day, asking if her station had covered the grisly topic of murdered women in East St. Louis. Oddly, nothing had ever been reported on such killings. So how could Maury have known? Then, on July 1st, 2000, the body of 61-year-old Mary Shields was discovered in East St. Louis. The horror in the air was palpable. Dave and his girlfriend exchanged nervous glances. Was this connected to what Maury had said, or was it just an eerie coincidence? As Maury settled back into his family's home at 101 Fort Drive, St. Louis, the real nightmare began. The house, with its dimly lit basement, became a dark sanctum for Maury's twisted desires. Since his teenage years, he had been consumed by the urge to dominate and torment those weaker than him, and now, the basement would serve as his gruesome stage. Maury meticulously transformed it into a sickening torture chamber, his own private hell. On his days off from the restaurant, Maury roamed the streets, preying on women. He offered them money in exchange for intimacy, only to drive them back to his home, where the true horrors awaited. Instead of paying them, he would lock them in the basement, where unspeakable acts took place. What began as a few isolated incidents soon spiraled into a horrifying pattern, one that would reveal Maury Travis's dark, insatiable thirst for control and violence, this time on a much deadlier scale. Maury recorded every horrific detail of his victim's suffering, both physical and emotional, with cold precision. His dark mind reveled in torturing them. Sometimes, he coerced women into bizarre rituals, forcing them into white clothes and sunglasses, demanding they dance wildly as if performing for his sick amusement. When his current prey no longer thrilled him, he disposed of them without hesitation. For months after the discovery of Mary Shields' body, Travis was arrested again for violating parole. He was sent back to prison, where he remained from November 29, 2000 to March 19, 2001. But the moment he was freed, his hunger for darkness led him to return to his vile acts. Less than 2 weeks after his release, the remains of Alicia Grainwaite were found in Washington Park, the gruesome discovery chilling everyone who came across it. Just 3 days later, another woman's lifeless body was found in East St. Louis. Her identity remained a mystery. The terror escalated, and from May to October 2001, Maury's bloodlust claimed the lives of 4 more women: Teresa Wilson, Veronica Thompson, Yvonne Cruz, and Brenda Beasley. One victim's leg bore the unmistakable imprint of tire treads, and forensic analysis uncovered seminal fluid on 2 separate corpses, allowing investigators to isolate the suspect's DNA. But the killings weren't enough for Maury. The darkness inside him craved attention, recognition. He wanted his name splashed across every newspaper, wanted to be immortalized as the most notorious predator. His bloodlust wasn't simply about murder. It was about making his presence known, ensuring the world would remember his horrors. At first, police officers failed to connect the dots between the deaths, treating each case as an isolated tragedy. Maury's reign of terror might have continued undetected, if not for his twisted arrogance. He couldn't resist the urge to toy with the detectives. When a newspaper article about one of his victims, Teresa Wilson, surfaced, Maury saw it as his moment to strike. He printed a map from the internet, pinpointing the location of another victim's remains, yet undiscovered. He mailed the map anonymously to the journalist who had written the article, ensuring it would be passed on to the authorities. The moment detectives saw the map, they realized what they were dealing with. The chilling realization hit hard. Maury wasn't just a predator. He was a man who wanted to be caught. His lack of remorse was evident in every action. He wasn't just killing. He was playing a dangerous game, eager to leave his mark. The thrill wasn't in the violence, but in the fear and chaos he left behind. And now he had given himself away, as if daring the authorities to catch him. The reporter who received the eerie letter wasted no time. He handed it straight to the police, sparking a swift response. The investigation team, following the directions on the cryptic map, uncovered another set of skeletal remains, yet another unidentified victim. The map, printed from an online source, became the key to the investigation. Detectives quickly traced the IP address of the computer where the map had been downloaded. Days later, their efforts led them to a singular address: 101 Fort Drive, St. Louis, Missouri, the residence of Maury Travis. At the break of dawn on June 7th, officers arrived at Maury's home. The door was answered by a disheveled, irritable Maury, clearly still groggy from sleep. He demanded to know why they dared disturb him at this hour, his tone sharp and defensive. Gone was the friendly, quiet man many remembered. When officers showed him the letter with the map, he quickly denied any involvement, preparing to slam the door shut. But the moment they told him the map had been printed from his own computer, his face turned pale, and the door reluctantly creaked open. Inside, Maury tried to control the situation, dodging questions with frequent topic changes. He was calm, almost smug, as he assumed he could outwit the investigators. But then the knock came, louder, more deliberate. It was the team with a search warrant. That's when Maury's facade crumbled. His polite demeanor disappeared in a flash, replaced by anger and profanity. He screamed at the officers for barging in. His rage only confirmed what the detectives already suspected. They were about to uncover something horrifying. Forensics quickly fanned out across the house, but the real discoveries came from the basement. Bloodstains splattered across the floor, smeared on the walls, and even hidden under the carpet, told a chilling story. But this was no single victim's blood. It was the blood of many. As the investigation team scoured the house, Maury remained under questioning. Detectives showed him a folder filled with photographs of women they suspected were his victims. Without emotion, Maury glanced at each one, dismissing them all with a casual, "I've never seen them before." But then, as the conversation shifted, he made a fatal mistake. Maury, seemingly lost in his own thoughts, suddenly asked if he could see the photographs again. The detectives, sharp and alert, immediately seized on his slip-up. They hadn't mentioned anything about the women being dead. Maury's eyes widened, his confident mask slipping as he realized his blunder. He lowered his head, silent for a moment, then finally muttered something that sealed his fate. The most chilling discovery came when investigators unearthed videotapes that exposed Maury's horrific acts, revealing his brutal torture of innocent victims. DNA evidence tied him to the murders of 12 to 20 women, all preyed upon between 2000 and 2022 in Missouri and Illinois. Many were vulnerable, drug addicts, sex workers, trapped in Maury's sadistic grip. During questioning, Travis casually requested a soda. The can was later tested, and DNA samples from his saliva matched biological evidence from 2 victims, Yvonne Cruz and Brenda Beasley, sealing his fate. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a disturbing diagram of Maury's plans for a basement prison, where he intended to chain women and install vents to the outside. A list of supplies included adult diapers, tools of a man determined to keep his victims captive. But the horror didn't end there. In 2002, the remains of several victims were discovered, including the mysterious St. Charles County Jane Doe. Her body, found near West Alton, Missouri, was unrecognizable, leaving only a trace of her life behind: a sleeveless denim dress, a black spandex top, and a white cotton sock. Her identity remained unknown for 21 years. A few months earlier, another woman, Monroe County Jane Doe, was found with no trace of her name, only the word Mavericks emblazoned on her shirt. She was young, African-American, and stood just 5 feet 1 inch. Her dark hair revealed a past injury, but otherwise, she remained a silent victim. Before these discoveries, Madison County Jane Doe and St. Clair County Jane Doe's skeletal remains were found in similar fashion, their stories silenced by the violence of Maury Troy Travis, his brutality extending to women whose names have yet to be known. Maury was suspected of the brutal murders of at least 12 women, with federal court documents linking him to these horrific crimes. He faced 2 charges of kidnapping, but investigators feared the real toll could be much higher, estimating that Maury may have killed as many as 17 women. On June 7, 2002, his arrest seemed like a victory for justice. His dark reign was finally over. But the city of St. Louis was about to be plunged into a deeper abyss. Just 3 days after his capture, Maury's cold, calculating mind hatched an unimaginable escape plan. On June 10, 2002, he penned a final note in his 8th-floor jail cell, intending to leave a dark legacy behind. Outside, an inmate had been assigned to monitor Maury, but the rules were violated. The guards failed to conduct 2 critical checks, giving Maury 45 minutes of solitude to execute his final act. Maury had no intention of facing life behind bars, nor did he fear the death penalty. Instead, he chose to control his fate, ending it on his own terms. His chilling note, a twisted farewell, read, "Dear Mom, I'm sorry for the pain this caused you and the family. My death seems to be the only way out. I've been sick in the head since I was 14. I've never felt normal or happy. I think about what's ahead of me, and this seems the best solution. I won't spend the rest of my life locked up or worse, killed with a needle. Tell Grandma Marina James and everybody I love them dearly. I love you the most, but you know that. Forever, your son, Toby Travis." With his note left behind, Maury executed his plan in the most twisted manner. He carefully tied a torn strip of bedsheet through a small jail vent, 6 feet high, and looped the other end around his neck. A pillowcase covered his face, and cloth stuffed in his mouth muted his final breaths. To seal his fate, he somehow managed to bind his own hands behind his back. His death shocked the community. One officer later said, "To say that people were angry is an understatement. The families of the victims should have been furious." Maury took the truth with him, leaving nothing but a legacy of torment and unanswered questions. But the dark story didn't end with his death. In 2014, Maury's mother, Sandra Travis, rented the home where he had committed his monstrous acts to a woman named Katrina Magahu. Unbeknownst to Magahu, the house had a sinister past. It wasn't until she saw a documentary years later that she learned the horrifying truth. When she attempted to break the lease, Sandra refused. News 4 reached out to Sandra, who claimed she had disclosed the house's dark history, but Magahu denied this, insisting that had she known, she would have remembered. The house's blood-stained history was a secret that never truly left. Subsequently, the St. Louis Housing Authority stepped in, allowing Katrina to break her lease. A month later, Maury's house was still listed for sale on a real estate website, though the price remained undisclosed. The victims never found justice, and their stories remain shrouded in darkness. Worse still, several of them remain unidentified, a cruel reminder of the horrors they've endured. As the details of this tragic case unfold, one chilling truth becomes clear. You never really know who your neighbors are. This monster living among us carried out his twisted crimes in the shadows, completely evading suspicion, even from those closest to him. The true horror lies in the mystery surrounding his actions. How could a man murder 17 women right under our noses without anyone raising an alarm? Not even the women he claimed to love had any idea. But the questions don't stop there. In a final, shocking twist, he chose to end his own life in that prison cell. Was the life he faced behind bars more unbearable than the suffering of his victims? Or was he simply too narcissistic to let anyone else decide when his fate would come to an end? This case raises more questions than we can even begin to answer. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story intrigued you, be sure to like the video and subscribe to Crime Secrets as we continue to uncover the untold stories of victims whose voices have been silenced. At 22, Mindy Morganstern's sudden silence, no calls, no messages, left her friends filled with dread. What started as a simple check-in led them to a horrific discovery. Mindy had been brutally murdered. The crime scene, chilling and violent, revealed a dark tale of terror. As detectives unraveled the clues, they were stunned by the killer's violent past and the shocking way he managed to secure a job as a prison guard. Who was Mindy Morganstern? Who could have committed such a crime? Lies, betrayal, and DNA evidence would reveal the devastating truth. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we'll discuss the events that occurred in 2006 in North Dakota. Born on April 29, 1984 in Bogota, Colombia, Mindy Morganstern's early life was shaped by the love of a family who embraced her as their own. Adopted by Eunice and Larry Morganstern, farmers from New Salem, North Dakota, Mindy was the youngest of 4 children. Eunice and Larry had already raised their biological daughter, Rebecca, but their dream was always to have a large family. Their first adoption was Michael, a boy they welcomed into their home, and 10 years later, they adopted April, a girl from Colombia. But their family was still incomplete. When they learned that April had a younger sister, Mindy, they knew their family was destined to grow once more. Mindy's childhood was idyllic, filled with the open skies of the farm where she thrived, riding horses, playing basketball, and even driving a tractor. After high school, Mindy left the peaceful life of New Salem behind and headed to Valley City to embrace the excitement of college life. She was a bright, outgoing spirit who quickly found her place among new friends. Juggling school with a job as a waitress at a local restaurant, it seemed as though the best years of her life were just beginning. Yet in a cruel twist of fate, everything Mindy had worked for, the dreams, the promise of a bright future, was about to be shattered, and no one could have predicted the terrifying darkness that loomed ahead. On the chilling afternoon of September 13th, two friends, Tony Bowman and Danielle Holster, became increasingly anxious as the hours ticked by without any word from their close friend, Mindy Morganstern. It was completely out of character for Mindy to go silent, especially considering the struggles she'd faced with her health, battling multiple sclerosis. Their concern for her welfare grew, and the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong pushed them to take action. Without hesitation, they made their way to her apartment, hoping to find her well. Arriving at the door, they knocked, but no response came. An eerie stillness that only heightened their unease. When Tony tried the door handle, it turned easily. It wasn't even locked. With growing dread, they stepped inside, unaware of the nightmare that awaited them. The moment they crossed the threshold, the air thickened with an overwhelming sense of something being horribly amiss. 2 steps in, they froze. There, at their feet, lay Mindy, her lifeless body sprawled across the floor. A cold rush of panic gripped them as their eyes were drawn to something wrapped around her neck. The horror was unmistakable. Someone had taken her life. Word of Mindy's death spread, and before long, the apartment was swarming with officers and forensic investigators. As the detectives moved through the apartment, they couldn't ignore the heavy scent of pine sol hanging in the air, an unnerving detail that raised immediate questions. Had the killer tried to cover up their tracks? The grim details only deepened the mystery. A belt was found tightly wound around Mindy's neck, a crude instrument of murder, and even more disturbing, evidence of a violent struggle. A knife, so violently thrust into her throat that the blade had snapped off the handle. The chilling nature of the crime was beginning to unfold, but the question remained: who could do something so horrific to such a kind soul? Everything took a dark and mysterious turn as the detectives began to analyze the crime scene. The first signs led them to a chilling theory. The killer had used a powerful cleaning agent to erase any trace of evidence. However, fortunately, some crucial clues remained. Forensic experts found skin particles under Mindy's left hand, proving she fought back with all her strength, scratching at her attacker. But the real puzzle was the motive behind the attack. A robbery gone wrong? No. Mindy's purse was still clutched tightly in her right hand. Her phone and wallet were next to her, cash untouched. Her jewelry and other valuables remained undisturbed. It was clear that the killer wasn't after her belongings. Another strange detail stood out. There was a laundry basket next to her body, as if she had been attacked the moment she walked in, arms full of clean clothes. The front door showed no signs of forced entry. This suggested that the attacker either knew Mindy or had entered the apartment right after her. The next morning, the detectives faced their most painful task: breaking the devastating news to the Morganstern family. The shock was unbearable. Mindy's parents, siblings, and friends were in complete disbelief. Who could have done this? Mindy was well-liked, with no enemies and no known run-ins with the law. But there was more. Tony and Danielle, the friends who discovered Mindy's body, weren't the only ones at the scene. A man who lived on the same floor had rushed to Mindy's apartment after hearing their screams. He checked Mindy's pulse and coldly declared she was dead. When questioned, he claimed to have used the back of his hand to check her pulse, ensuring he left no fingerprints on Mindy's wrist. His strange behavior and calm demeanor raised immediate suspicions. Was he simply a concerned neighbor, or was he the one responsible for the horrific crime? The detectives felt they were standing on the edge of uncovering a truth far more sinister than they had ever imagined. The man's name was Robert Lind. His hands were covered in fresh scratches, a detail that immediately raised suspicion. The authorities weren't about to overlook such a significant clue. They brought him into the station, their questions sharp and unyielding. But the more they dug into Robert Lynn's background, the more unsettling it became. His criminal history emerged, and with it, a dark pattern of behavior that caught the investigators' attention. The interrogation took a new turn when they confronted him about the scratches on his hands. Calmly, he explained that they were from his work. Working with steel, he claimed, left him with cuts regularly. But the officers were far from satisfied. They pressed him further, demanding details on how he spent the day before Mindy's murder. He had been at work since 7 a.m., finishing his shift at 5:30 p.m. To his relief, his employer confirmed the alibi and further confirmed that his hands were often covered in abrasions from the job. Still, something didn't sit right. The alibi seemed too perfect, and investigators couldn't shake the nagging feeling that Lynn might still be hiding something. Reluctantly, they asked for a DNA sample, which he provided without protest. The sample was sent to the lab with hopes that it would confirm or destroy any connection to the crime scene. As they waited for the results, the investigators expanded their search. They spoke to all of Mindy's friends, but the answers were always the same. She had no enemies, no conflicts, and no reason to be a target. The case seemed to be growing colder until they turned their focus to her neighbors. Among them was Mo Gibbs, a seemingly ordinary corrections officer from Barnes County Jail. He was known to the detectives, and they decided to pay him a visit. With his access to inmates, he might have overheard something that could help crack the case. Mo Gibbs had a family. His wife and child lived next door to Mindy. He arrived at the station with his young child, who played innocently in the background while the officers zeroed in on their interview with Mo. The detectives knew this was their chance to uncover the truth. Mo answered their questions with a calm demeanor and stoic expression, but something about his answers didn't sit right. The investigators couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than he was letting on, and the truth was just beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. As the investigators dug deeper into Mo's past, they uncovered a troubling pattern of deception. Though Mo had been upfront about his job and whereabouts, it became clear that he had hidden key details to make himself appear more innocent. At first, he passed their questioning without raising any alarms, but soon enough, cracks began to show in his story and in his character. To start with, Mo wasn't even his real name. His true identity was Glenn Dale Morgan Jr., a name he had changed years earlier. As investigators pieced together his past, they discovered Glenn's dark history. He wasn't just a corrections officer. He had once been an amateur boxer and briefly served in the Navy. But his military career had ended abruptly when he was arrested and convicted of attempted murder. He had been sentenced to 10 years, but unsurprisingly, his sentence was reduced and he served just 5 years in prison. The name change in 2005 seemed to be an effort to erase his violent past, distancing himself from his criminal history, and he had been successful in doing so. Even his wife didn't know the full extent of his past. But that was only the beginning. The deeper the investigators dug, the darker the secrets they uncovered. Mo had been married before, at just 18, to a woman named Tasha. Despite his conviction for attempted murder, Tasha stayed with him, but their marriage ended in 1997, shortly before his release. His second marriage to a woman named Melissa in 2002 lasted only 3 years. The shocking part, while still married to Melissa, 2 other women came forward, each claiming Mo owed them child support for children born in 2003. The authorities discovered that, over the years, at least 5 women had filed child support claims against Mo. But his web of lies didn't end there. After moving to North Dakota, he met Christina, his current partner. While Mo had admitted to his criminal background, he had failed to disclose the full extent of his past, including the attempted murder charge. On the day Mindy was murdered, Mo claimed he had been at work at the Barnes County Correctional Center until 7 a.m. before dropping Christina off at work between 12:30 and 12:40 p.m. But as investigators pieced together his tangled history, the question remained: was he telling the truth, or was he hiding something far more sinister? The turning point in this case came when Mo, unaware of the trouble ahead, went back home to pack his things. An autopsy revealed a chilling overlap. Mindy's time of death fell between 12:30 and 1:30 p.m., precisely when Mo had been near her location. But a real bombshell came next. Under her fingernails, traces of Mo's DNA were found. This wasn't just circumstantial evidence, it was a smoking gun. And as if the DNA wasn't damning enough, Mo's hands were covered in fresh cuts. His injury was a grim match to the violent struggle that ended Mindy's life. But Mo's troubles didn't end there. Under intense scrutiny, investigators uncovered a chilling link to a cold case from 2004 in Fargo, where his DNA matched a brutal sexual assault. Mo had voluntarily handed over his DNA to authorities, but it was now clear he had sealed his own fate. With every piece of evidence stacking up, his DNA, the proximity to the crime scene, the wounds on his hands, and a haunting history of criminal behavior, the detectives knew they had their man. On September 21st, 2006, Mo was arrested for first-degree murder with no bond set. But Mo wasn't ready to go down without a fight. Just 5 days later, he pled not guilty, and the trial began its bitter journey. And in a stunning twist, new charges piled on. 5 female inmates came forward, accusing Mo of sexually assaulting them while he was working at Barnes County Jail. The weight of these allegations was devastating. 6 more felony charges were added to his growing list. The case garnered such intense media attention that the trial was moved to mine it. As the trial began in 2007, the public and courtroom were on edge. After 23 hours of deliberation, the first jury was deadlocked. But the prosecution didn't back down. They painted Mo as a predatory monster who had attempted to assault Mindy, and when she fought back, he killed her to cover his tracks. His defense tried to discredit the DNA evidence, even claiming that fingerprints found at the scene didn't match Mo. But by October 2007, a retrial had taken place, and Mo was finally found guilty. The judge sentenced him to life, without the possibility of parole. Even as he stood convicted, Mo clung to his innocence. He sent his condolences to Mindy's family, offering a hollow apology. In a powerful moment in court, Mindy's mother spoke directly to Mo, forgiving him but never forgetting the pain he had caused. She also extended her sympathy to his own family, especially his children. Though Mo denied involvement in Mindy's death, he admitted his guilt in the cold case from Fargo and the multiple sexual assaults at the prison. The prosecution suggested Mo's actions were fueled by a deep, uncontrollable sexual addiction. One particularly disturbing detail came to light. One of the assaults at the prison had taken place on the very same day that Mindy was murdered. For these crimes, Mo was sentenced to additional terms of 12 and 15 years to run concurrently with his life sentence. As the story unfolded, those who knew Mo were stunned. He had been seen as a disciplined athlete, a man who cared for his children. But the truth that emerged was far darker. Now, Mo sits in the maximum security North Dakota State Penitentiary in Bismarck, serving his time at 51 years old. Despite the unimaginable pain Mindy's adoptive parents endured, they have found a shred of forgiveness. The journey for justice may have been long, but in the end, the truth triumphed. Mindy Morgan was laid to rest at the Serene Grace Cemetery in New Salem, just a stone's throw from the home where her adoptive family and siblings had lovingly raised her. While the brutal and senseless way she lost her life remains a tragic, unbearable wound, her family and friends are determined not to let the darkness of her death define her. They refuse to let the cruelty of that final moment overshadow the light she brought to the world. Her spirit, unbreakable, fierce, and full of love, shone brightly in everything she did. Her unwavering faith, a bond she shared deeply with her parents, radiated through her dreams of one day becoming a missionary, spreading compassion and kindness wherever she went. She was remembered for the joy she brought to every room, for the passion she poured into sports and music, and for her relentless strength to rise above any obstacle in her way. Though her death was a tragedy that shook her loved ones to their core, they somehow found the strength to forgive. To honor her, a heart-shaped memorial was erected at the corner of 9th Street Northeast and 5th Street Avenue Northeast. Her final tribute, a beacon of the good she gave to the world, forever standing tall in her memory, refusing to be consumed by the horror of her death. As for Mo, thankfully, he will never walk free again. But let's not forget, he didn't just take Mindy's life. He left a trail of victims in his wake, not only through murder, but through a horrifying pattern of sexual assault. How he managed to infiltrate a prison system just by changing his name is beyond baffling. Proof that sometimes the systems meant to protect us are deeply flawed. And with that, folks, this is where our story ends for now. What do you think about this case? How does it make you feel? Let me know in the comments below. If there's a case you'd like us to dive into, feel free to share it with us. And if you found this video engaging, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated. Take care, stay safe, and we'll be back with more stories next time. Can you truly trust your best friend? This story will make you question everything about trust and betrayal when your closest ally becomes your worst nightmare. In 2006, Tiffany Hall rushed to a hospital with a lifeless newborn, claiming a tragic premature birth. But when doctors insisted on an examination, she refused, raising suspicions. Meanwhile, Jamela Tunstall, pregnant and with 3 young children, vanished without a trace. As investigators dug deeper, shocking truths emerged, truths no one could have foreseen. Tiffany's dark secrets slowly unraveled, revealing a chilling, calculated plan driven by something far darker than simple jealousy. The horror didn't just lie in her betrayal. It was in the terrifying depths of her twisted motives. By the end of this story, you'll be left asking, what truly drives someone to commit such unimaginable acts? And how well can you ever really know the people closest to you? The story begins in East St. Louis, Illinois, where 2 young girls, Jamela Tunstall and Tiffany Hall, formed a close friendship from an early age. They met in kindergarten and grew up together in a rough neighborhood where both faced difficult lives. Jamela had a troubled childhood. She lived in several foster homes and struggled through her adolescent years. Despite these challenges, she remained enrolled in school and met Tiffany, who would become her lifelong best friend. Tiffany, too, had a tough upbringing. At 14, she was arrested for assaulting her mother and had trouble following curfew, attending school, and staying out of trouble. She eventually dropped out of high school. But through it all, Tiffany and Jamela formed a bond that felt more like sisterhood. As an adult, Jamela became a mother to 3 children, Damond, Ivan, and Janella. She faced challenges in motherhood, even losing custody of her children for a time after an incident of corporal punishment. However, Jamela took parenting classes, regained custody, and began to rebuild her life. She bought a car, enrolled in community college, and dreamed of becoming a photographer. Tiffany, on the other hand, became a mother at 16 and faced her own hardships. One of her daughters was seriously injured as a baby, which led to Tiffany losing custody. The child faced lifelong disabilities due to the abuse. After a few years, Tiffany regained custody of her daughters when the charges were dropped, but her life remained chaotic. She continued to get involved in legal troubles, including a charge for possessing a stolen credit card. Despite their difficult lives, Jamela worked hard to provide for her children. She kept them close, never letting them play outside too much in their dangerous neighborhood. She made sure to walk them to the bus stop every day and ensure they had the toys and games they needed. But no one could predict the horrifying twist that would come next, as Tiffany, once Jamela's best friend, would become the perpetrator of a tragedy no one could have imagined. By 2006, Jamela Tunstall was 7 months pregnant, eagerly awaiting the birth of her baby girl. She had dreams of a fresh start, a future full of hope and possibilities for herself and her children. But while Jamela focused on her family, Tiffany Hall, her lifelong best friend, was entangled in a web of personal turmoil. Life seemed to continually challenge Tiffany, but despite everything, the bond between the two women remained unbreakable. Tiffany frequently babysat Jamela's children, trying to be the supportive friend she had always been, even though her own life was far from stable. However, everything began to unravel on the night of September 16, 2006. Tiffany made a chilling phone call to the police, claiming she had just given birth to a stillborn baby at Frank Holton Park. When she arrived at the hospital, the situation took a bizarre and unsettling turn. Tiffany refused to let doctors examine her, a move that raised immediate suspicion. Investigators began to dig deeper into her story, but Tiffany's accounts kept shifting. She fluctuated between saying she had been assaulted and then vehemently denying it. It was soon revealed that no one had known Tiffany was pregnant, except for her boyfriend, a Navy sailor. The autopsy on the newborn, whom Tiffany had named Tiffany Horn, showed no signs of trauma and failed to determine a cause of death. The story became even stranger when Tiffany took charge of the funeral arrangements. Despite the unusual circumstances surrounding her claims, she went ahead with a service for the baby on September 21st. But the funeral itself raised more red flags. Tiffany arrived 2 hours late, a stark contrast to what one would expect at such an emotional event. Only 2 family members attended, which seemed odd considering the gravity of the situation. Among those present was her boyfriend, Keith Horn, who had come from his Navy base, believing the child being buried was his. Meanwhile, Jamela had mysteriously disappeared. No one could reach her, and her family was desperate to know her whereabouts. Phone calls, messages, and social media posts went unanswered. It was as if she had vanished without a trace. The mystery deepened. It wasn't until after the funeral that Tiffany had a conversation with Keith that would unravel everything. Tiffany nonchalantly confessed to Keith that she had cut the baby out of Jamela. The words struck Keith like a thunderbolt. He couldn't fathom what he had just heard. Was it even possible? His mind raced in horror. Without hesitation, Keith sprang into action, calling the police to report Tiffany's chilling confession. The police responded immediately. Just 6 days after Jamela's disappearance, they found her body in a remote area of high weeds near Tiffany's home. The discovery shocked the community. Even more horrifying was the finding of a pair of scissors near her remains, evidence that would point directly to Tiffany. The chilling truth began to surface. That very night, Tiffany was arrested, and as she sat in custody, she began to confess to the unthinkable. She explained that earlier that week, Jamela had been at Tiffany's mother's house, where they spent the day together. The situation escalated when Tiffany, in a violent frenzy, struck Jamela over the head with a table leg, knocking her unconscious. Tiffany then proceeded to carry out the unspeakable act, severing Jamella's life from the world in a gruesome act of betrayal. What was once a story of friendship, trust, and shared dreams had turned into a nightmare of unthinkable violence and deception, leaving everyone, especially Keith, struggling to comprehend the depths of Tiffany's betrayal. Tiffany's actions on the night of Jamella's death were terrifying and unimaginable. After Jamella was knocked unconscious, Tiffany tied her hands and feet with duct tape to make sure she couldn't escape. When Jamella regained consciousness, she tried to break free, but Tiffany, now completely out of control, hit her again and taped her mouth shut to stop her from crying for help. Tiffany then dragged Jamella's body into the bathroom, where she did something horrific. She cut open Jamella's stomach with scissors, trying to take her baby from her. Jamella was still alive during this, but she lost so much blood that she eventually died. After the crime, Tiffany tried to hide what she had done. She wrapped Jamella's body in a shower curtain and left it in a vacant lot behind her house. Tiffany had been planning this for weeks. Just days before, she bought scissors, alcohol, and other items to make a homemade birth kit. She had even been pretending to be pregnant, hoping it would bring her boyfriend, Keith, back from the Navy under false pretenses. The news of Jamella's death and Tiffany's arrest shocked everyone. Both of their families were in disbelief. But things got worse when it was discovered that Jamella's 3 children were missing. The police went to Jamella's apartment to search for clues. They learned that Jamella's partner, Ivan, had last seen the children 3 days earlier, but his story seemed odd because he said they had been with Tiffany that night. The police were becoming more suspicious. Tiffany eventually confessed to where the children were. When the police went to Jamella's apartment, they were met with a terrible smell. Inside, they found the bodies of Jamella's children, 2 in the washing machine and 1 in the dryer. They had been there for 5 days, unnoticed, while the police had searched the place the day before without realizing. Tiffany then told the police what happened. She explained that she had lied to Ivan, telling him that Jamella wanted her children and car. Tiffany then took the children and told them they were going for a bath, but instead, she drowned them in the same bathtub where she had killed their mother. Some reports say she even drugged the kids to make it easier to kill them. Afterward, she stuffed their bodies in the washing machine and dryer. No one could understand why Tiffany did this. Why would she kill her best friend? Why harm innocent children? Was she ever really pregnant, or was this all part of a bigger lie? People couldn't stop asking these questions, but no answers came. The truth behind this horror was far beyond anyone's comprehension. Tiffany's confession to the children's murders. Now, let's take a closer look at Tiffany's side of the story. On September 18th, just 3 days before the funeral and shortly after she had committed the unthinkable act against Jamal and her unborn baby, Tiffany had more plans in store. Tiffany spun a big lie to Ivan, claiming that Jamal wanted her kids and her car. This sneaky story let Tiffany pick up 7-year-old Den, 2-year-old Ivan, and 10-month-old Janella. Once she had them, Tiffany casually told the kids it was time for a bath. But instead of a fun splash, one by one, she drowned them in the same bathtub where she had killed their mother. Some reports even say that she drugged the kids with cough syrup before putting them in the tub, making it even easier for her to carry out her horrific plan. After the terrible act, Tiffany stuffed their tiny bodies into the washer and dryer of Jamal's apartment in the John the Shields housing complex. By this point, she had not only taken her best friend's life and that of Jamal's unborn baby, but also confessed to the murders of her 3 children. All the kids were naked except for a pair of underpants on one of the children. Surprisingly, Tiffany never gave any reason for why she killed Jamal's kids, leaving everyone puzzled. Why would someone take the life of their best friend? What could drive a woman to harm 3 innocent kids? Did Tiffany really have a miscarriage, or was she ever even pregnant? Did she struggle with mental health issues? The questions seemed never-ending. The funeral of Jamal on September 29, 2006, was nothing short of overwhelming. Over 700 people, family, friends, and strangers, came together, drawn by the tragedy of a life stolen too soon. As they gathered to mourn, the air was thick with sorrow, but also filled with memories of Jam's radiant smile, the childlike joy that lit up her face whenever she spoke of her kids, and her unique quirk of easily becoming bored. People shared stories, their voices trembling with emotion, recalling the lively and distinct personalities of her children, their warmth providing a brief, bittersweet light on an otherwise devastating day. In a shocking show of unity, the community raised over $330,000 in just 3 days, an incredible outpouring of support to help cover the funeral expenses for Jamal and her children. Yet the true cost of this tragedy was far greater than any dollar amount could measure. As the investigation into Jamal's death unfolded, Tiffany's role in this unimaginable horror became clearer. Initially, she was charged with the brutal murder of Jamal and her unborn daughter. But as the police dug deeper, 3 more chilling murder charges were added for the children. Tiffany's plea of not guilty sent shockwaves through the community, her refusal to take responsibility only adding fuel to the fire of suspicion. A psychiatric evaluation was ordered, but Tiffany's behavior grew even more erratic. Her initial defense, a public defender, seemed inadequate for the weight of the crimes she stood accused of. But when the state announced that they would pursue the death penalty, Tiffany's case took an even darker turn. She was assigned a new attorney, one seasoned in the most grave of criminal cases, someone who could perhaps keep her from the ultimate punishment. But with each passing moment, the reality of Tiffany's actions seemed harder to escape, and the world wondered if any defense could save her from the horrors she had unleashed. James Maury, one of Tiffany Hall's lawyers, mentioned that while Tiffany was deemed mentally fit to stand trial, she also had some serious mental health issues going on and scored in the mid-70s on the IQ scale. But what sets Tiffany apart from other women who have committed similar crimes is that she already had kids of her own. Her daughters were just 7 and 8 years old at the time of the murders. On June 10, 2008, Tiffany was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the horrific crime of murdering 5 people, including Jamal and her children. However, in September 2008, Tiffany tried to backtrack on her guilty plea, claiming her lawyer didn't do a good job defending her. Fortunately, the court shot down her request. In 2012, she filed another petition asking for a new lawyer, arguing that her trial attorneys weren't up to par. That one didn't get anywhere either, but Tiffany didn't give up. She felt strongly that her lawyers didn't properly investigate her mental health or whether she was fit to stand trial. In her petition, Tiffany claimed that Gish didn't even get the paperwork for her psychiatric evaluation until 2 days after she had already entered her guilty plea. The report from a second psychiatrist, who was supposed to figure out if she was sane at the time of the crime, was stamped as received on June 11, 2008, while Tiffany had made her plea on June 9th. The first report said Tiffany was fit to stand trial, but it didn't answer the most important question. Was she sane when she committed crime? The second report revealed something shocking. It showed that Tiffany had a long history of mental health problems, starting in her childhood, with many hospital stays. She was diagnosed with severe conditions like psychotic disorder, PTSD, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and mild mental retardation. Despite all of this, Tiffany didn't back down. She kept fighting. The court decided to let her continue her fight after reversing her denial for post-conviction relief. Tiffany's new lawyers worked hard in 2015 and 2016, asking for more time to perfect her case. She even asked for a new lawyer, but the court said no. In the end, her petition was dismissed because it didn't meet the requirements, but Tiffany wasn't finished. She appealed the decision, claiming her lawyer didn't do enough to fix the petition. In 2020, Tiffany finally won her appeal, which gave her another chance to file for relief. Her case might take years to resolve, but at least Jamal's family can find some peace knowing that Tiffany is behind bars. Tiffany, now 42, is held at Logan Correctional Center in Lincoln, Illinois. Jamal's stillborn baby girl was exhumed and buried with Jamal and her 3 other children in Stat, Illinois, bringing a small sense of closure to the family. Tiffany's case is one of the most shocking and disturbing crimes ever committed by a woman. It's a reminder that we can never fully understand what someone is capable of. Now we ask you, is life in prison enough for what Tiffany did? We want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Tiffany truly deserves to stay behind bars for the rest of her life? Share your opinion in the comments below. If you're captivated by these intense, thought-provoking stories, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling deep dives. Your support helps us keep bringing you these compelling cases. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more.